The air in our house crackled with a tension thicker than the humidity of a Louisiana summer. It wasn't the usual kind, the simmering resentment that had always existed between Julian and me. This was different, raw and electric, a current that surged between us with every shared glance, every accidental brush of hands. Julian had moved in with us after his parents' divorce. He was a year younger, a whirlwind of messy hair, torn jeans, and a rebellious streak that clashed with my own carefully constructed order. We were oil and water, always at odds, our personalities as different as our chosen paths in life. I, the dutiful son, the golden child, the one expected to follow in my father's footsteps. Julian, the free spirit, the artist, the one who dared to question everything. Our initial interactions were a minefield of petty squabbles and thinly veiled insults. He'd leave his guitar strewn across the living room floor, a constant eyesore that grated on my nerves. I'd meticulously fold laundry, only to find it crumpled in a heap in his room. The tension was palpable, a silent war waged with every misplaced object, every raised eyebrow. But beneath the surface, something else was brewing. A strange fascination, a forbidden curiosity. I'd catch him watching me, his eyes lingering on my hands as I cooked, on the way my muscles flexed as I lifted a heavy box. He'd make a snide comment, his voice rough with suppressed laughter, but his eyes would betray a flicker of something else: admiration, desire. One evening, while watching a late-night movie, a playful argument erupted. We were teasing each other, our voices rising, the air thick with a potent mix of anger and arousal. I leaned in, my face inches from his, my breath catching in my throat. His eyes widened, a shock of recognition flashing across his features. "You're different," he whispered, his voice husky. "And you're not," I countered, my heart pounding against my ribs. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Different how? Different from what? The tension was unbearable, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken desires that simmered beneath the surface. From that moment on, a game began, a dangerous dance of testing boundaries, of pushing each other to the edge. We'd bump into each other in the hallway, our bodies brushing, sending shivers down my spine. We'd linger over meals, our conversations laced with double entendres, the air crackling with unspoken desires. One night, I found him in my room, his eyes dark and intense. He was standing by my window, the moonlight casting long shadows across his face. He turned to me, a slow, predatory smile playing on his lips. "You know," he said, his voice a low growl, "this game is getting old." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He took a step closer, his hand reaching out to brush a stray strand of hair from my forehead. "I think it's time we stopped playing." The air between us throbbed with a silent understanding. We were both drowning in a sea of unspoken desires, desperate to break the surface, to finally breathe. That night, the line between game and reality blurred. We explored each other with a hesitant touch, our bodies trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. The air in my room was thick with the scent of sweat and fear, the silence broken only by the pounding of our hearts. His touch, initially hesitant, grew bolder, exploring the contours of my body with a reverence that both humbled and aroused me. I had always been the picture of control, but with him I felt utterly lost, utterly abandoned to the moment. My breath hitched as his fingers traced the line of my jaw, the pad of his thumb brushing against my lower lip. I parted my lips slightly, a silent invitation, and he leaned in, his breath warm against my skin. Our first kiss was a tentative exploration, a hesitant brush of lips that quickly ignited into something more. He tasted of mint and rebellion, a flavor that sent a jolt of electricity through me. I ran my hands through his hair, tangling my fingers in the messy strands, pulling him closer, desperate for more. He groaned, his hands gripping my shoulders, his fingers digging into my skin. I arched into him, my body craving the contact, the pressure of his weight against mine. He broke the kiss, his eyes dark and intense, a predatory glint in their depths. "You have no idea what you're doing to me," he whispered, his voice rough with desire. I felt a thrill course through me, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I wanted to push him away, to deny the intensity of the feelings that were consuming me, but my body betrayed me. I reached for his belt, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the buckle. He watched me, his eyes widening with a mixture of surprise and arousal. He leaned down, his lips grazing my ear. "Let me," he murmured, his voice a low growl. He quickly undid his belt, his hands moving with a practiced ease. As he shed his clothes, I couldn't help but stare. He was lean and muscular, his body sculpted by years of physical activity. A wave of lust washed over me, and I knew there was no turning back. As the night deepened, our inhibitions melted away. We moved with a desperate urgency, our bodies intertwined, our souls entwined. The world outside ceased to exist, replaced by the primal symphony of our desires. The morning after, we lay tangled in the sheets, our bodies still buzzing with the aftershocks of the night before. The silence was broken by the soft clatter of dishes from downstairs, a reminder of the world that existed beyond our shared room. We looked at each other, our eyes filled with a mixture of guilt, excitement, and fear. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. What now? Our relationship became a clandestine affair, a secret we guarded with fierce determination. We met in the dead of night, our encounters fueled by a potent mix of passion and paranoia. We whispered sweet nothings, our voices barely above a breath, our bodies pressed together, seeking warmth and solace in each other's embrace. But the fear of discovery loomed large. The possibility of our secret being revealed was a constant weight on our shoulders. We walked on eggshells, our every interaction laced with a subtle tension, a fear that every glance, every shared touch, was being watched, judged. One day, while exploring a secluded spot in the woods, we were caught off guard by a group of hikers. The sudden intrusion shattered the fragile peace of our world. Julian, ever the rebel, reacted with a defiant anger, while I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. We fled the scene, our hearts racing, our minds reeling. The incident served as a stark reminder of the precariousness of our situation. The fear of discovery intensified, casting a long shadow over our relationship. Despite the danger, our passion continued to burn. We found solace in each other's arms, our bodies a refuge from the fear and uncertainty that plagued our lives. We cherished every stolen moment, every whispered word, knowing that each encounter could be our last. One evening, while sharing a quiet dinner with our family, I noticed a strange glint in my mother's eyes as she looked at Julian. A flicker of suspicion, perhaps? Or was it just my imagination, fueled by paranoia? That night I couldn't sleep. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew rapidly, taking root in my mind. I tossed and turned, haunted by the possibility of being discovered. The next morning, I confronted Julian. "I think they know," I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "Who knows?" "My mother," I said. "I think she suspects something." Julian's face paled. "What are we going to do?" We spent the next few days walking on eggshells, our every move scrutinized, our conversations carefully monitored. The tension in the house was palpable, a silent accusation hanging in the air. One evening, while cleaning the attic, I stumbled upon an old photograph album. As I flipped through the pages, I came across a picture of my mother, her arm around a young woman, their faces filled with love and affection. The woman in the photograph was beautiful, her smile radiant. As I stared at the picture, a realization dawned on me. My mother was not the picture of heteronormativity that I had always assumed her to be. The discovery sent shockwaves through me. It challenged everything I thought I knew about my family, about myself. If my own mother could keep such a significant part of her life hidden, What did that say about the possibility of keeping my own secret safe? I confronted my mother that evening, my heart pounding in my chest. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I was speechless. "You know?" She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've known about you and Julian for a while now." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "How?" She sighed, her gaze drifting towards the window. "I saw you that night in the woods. I've always suspected something." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed by a surge of guilt. I had underestimated her love and acceptance. "I'm not going to judge you," she said, her voice gentle. "I just want you to be happy." Her words were a balm to my soul. I had been so consumed by fear, so focused on the potential consequences, that I had forgotten about the love and support that existed within my own family. The revelation of my mother's knowledge brought a sense of liberation. The weight of secrecy that had been pressing down on me for so long finally lifted, replaced by a sense of freedom and acceptance. Julian, overjoyed by the news, moved out of the house, renting a small apartment nearby. Our relationship blossomed, no longer confined by the shadows of secrecy. We were finally free to be ourselves, to love openly and without fear. We faced challenges, of course. There were disapproving glances from neighbors, hushed whispers at family gatherings. But we faced them together, our love a shield against the world's judgment. Years later, as I stood at the altar, my hand clasped in Julian's, I looked out at the sea of faces. My mother smiled at me, her eyes filled with pride and love, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly accepted. That night, on our wedding night, we made love with a tenderness and passion that mirrored the years of love and understanding we had built. It was a celebration of our journey and the enduring power of love in all its forms.
Hey there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to help us grow and keep sharing amazing content with you. And feel free to explore our other videos, we've got so much more epicness waiting for you. Thank you for being part of our journey, you're the real MVPs.